Hey guys, this is Mr. Grice for Algebra Unit 8.6 Notes, Day 1. Today we're talking about the quadratic formula. Our learning target today is to be able to solve quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula. So, when do I use which method? So, let's talk about factoring first. When we use factoring, the first thing that we want to do is make sure to set it equal to 0 first, and then we can use it if the polynomial can be factored. So let's take a look to see what that looks like. The first thing I look at is my quadratic term. It's positive, so I want to move everything over to the left. So I'm going to subtract 5 to both sides, and then I'm going to subtract the 2m to both sides. When we do that, we get 5m squared minus 8m minus 4 equaling to 0. So this is where we check, is there a GCF? Nope, no GCF. So I'm going to multiply. I'm looking for numbers that add up to get to -20 and add to get to -8. What are they? If you said 2 and 10, you're right. But one of them has to be negative. Good, the -10. Okay, so we have to split that middle term. We get 5m squared plus 2m minus 10m minus 4. Remember, that is still equal to 0. And now let's split. So we take the GCF out of the first group, which is just a m. The m comes out front, and we're left with 5m plus 2. Now, the GCF of the back is what? Yeah, I can take out a -2. Okay, so the -2 comes out front, and I'm left with 5m plus 2. And just like we wanted to, we're left with 5m plus 2. And then our other binomial is the m minus 2. And remember that that's set equal to 0. Don't do all that work and forget that we're solving. So everything with a variable we set equal to 0 and solve. Okay, so on the left side I would subtract 2 and divide by 5, and on the right side we just add 2 to both sides. So we get our answers of -2/5 and 2. All right, now if the equation has when to use inverse operations or SADMAP, we have to make sure it's set equal to 0 first. If there's no linear term, that's when it's crossed out, or if it has parentheses. And now since this one has parentheses, we can just follow inverse operations. Okay, so the first thing that we would do is subtract 3 to both sides. And we get 4 parentheses x plus 3 squared equaling 64. That 4 is being multiplied, so the opposite of multiplication is division. And we still have the x plus 3 inside the parentheses squared equaling 16. Now, to get rid of the exponent, the square, we have to take the square root. And then we're left with x plus 3 equals, remember that turns into a plus or minus 4. And now to solve, we subtract 3 to both sides. I'm going to subtract 3 over here. And then I have -4 minus 3 and +4 minus 3. and that's where we get -7 and 1. Okay, and then I'm just going to write that down on the line. X equals -7 and 1. Now, the quadratic formula. So, the quadratic formula, the first thing, just like all the other ones, we want it to set equal to 0. Okay? And here's how it should look. The ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And we can use this for any quadratic, especially if it can't be factored. Okay? So depending on what you want to do, we can use any of them to solve it this way. Okay? So let's take a look. There's our huge formula. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. So, does anyone remember the song Pop Goes the Weasel? Yeah, you can sing it to the quadratic formula. You ready? X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. You're probably going to get sick of Miss Carranza and I singing it to you because we are going to sing it over and over and over again. Okay? So, the nice thing is, in the first one, that it's already set equal to 0. So I need to know, what does A equal, what does B equal, and what does C equal? Well, A equals 3, B equals 5, and C equals 1. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So X equals the opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC, all divided by 2A. Okay, and now we start plugging in. So wherever there's an A, that's where the A goes. Anywhere there's a C, plug it in. You guys have done that before. Okay, now as we're solving this, we're only going to do this a little bit at a time. Okay, I know that the opposite of -5 is, or the opposite of 5 is -5. Okay, I'm going to have to do plus or minus something. I know that 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, so now I'm just going to plug that bottom part into my calculator. All right, and that's the 5 squared. So 5 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1. And then we get 13. So 13 goes under here. Now, just remember that it's plus or minus. So we're going to have 2 answers here. Once we get to here, I'm going to break it off to the x equals the -5 plus the square root of 13 divided by 6. And the bottom one is going to be x equals -5 minus the square root of 13 divided by 6. Now, if you're going to plug this directly into your calculator, we would do in parentheses, -5 plus the square root of 13 divided by 6. And then we would do the same thing, -5 minus the square root of 13 in parentheses divided by 6. Okay? So when you plug that into your calculator, let's do the first one. So in parentheses, I have -5 plus the square root of 13. Oh, sorry. Square root of 13 divided by 6. Okay, so that's negative 2.3. And then over here on the bottom, we do it again. We do negative 5. This time I'm subtracting the square root of 13 divided by 6. And we get negative 1.43. So my final answer, I would say that x is in order negative 1.43 and negative 0.23. And remember, that is where they would cross the x-axis around those points. Okay, let's flip it over. Okay, so solve the quadratic equation by using the quadratic formula and round to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so all we're doing here is the quadratic formula. So I need it set equal to 0 first. Okay, so I'm going to add the 2x over, and I'm going to add the 12 over. Those cancel. We get the 0 on the left right side, and x squared plus 9x plus 16. Okay, so we're going straight into the quadratic formula. I know that a is 1, b is 9, and c is 16. Okay, you need to do this every single time. Okay, so x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Excuse me. Okay, and then I'm going to start plugging everything in. 9, that's 1, that's c, and there we go. And remember, we just do a little bit at a time, okay? The opposite of 9 is a negative 9. On the bottom, 2 times 1 is 2. So the only thing we're going to plug into our calculator right now is that part. The 9 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16. Okay, and that's the only thing that we need right now is the 17. That's going to go underneath the square root. Okay, move this down just a little bit. And now we're going to break it off into the negative 9 plus the square root of 17 divided by 2, and negative 9 minus the square root of 17 divided by 2. And remember, just plug that straight into your calculator to get your two answers. Okay, so we'll do it again together. So in parentheses, negative 9 plus the square root of 17 divided by 2. And so we get negative 2.4, round it. Yeah, negative 2.44. Which one is that? Is that the plus, right? Okay. So negative 2.44. And then we do it again with subtraction. Negative 9 minus the square root of 17 squared divided by 2. And then we get negative 6.56. All right, so I'm going to write my answers in order. Negative 6.56 and negative 2.44. Okay. Number 2. Okay, it's not set equal to 0. So I'm going to add the x to the other side, and then I'm going to subtract my 5. So then I got 0 equals 3x squared minus 1x minus 5. And I want to know what A, B, and C are, okay? A equals 3, B equals -1, and C equals -5. Okay, so we plug in. Excuse me. Me. You ready? X equals the opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC, all divided by 2A. Okay, let's plug it in. We get -1, -1, A, C, and A. Okay, the opposite of -1 is a +1, plus or minus the square root. 2 times 3 on the bottom is 6. And now we have to do -1 squared, make sure you put that in parentheses, minus 4 times 3 times -5. And we get 61. Okay, so we get 1 plus the square root of 61 divided by 6, and 1 minus the square root of 61 divided by 6. So we're going to pause the video, and you guys are going to tell me what those answers are. Good luck. Okay, so you should have gotten -1.14 and 1.47. Okay, let's move on to number 3. So first thing we want to do is get everything set equal to 0. So I'm going to add x to the other side, and I'm going to add 2 to the other side. So those cancel, and we get 0 equals 5x squared. Yep, plus x plus 10. Okay, so remember, what does A equal, what does B equal, and what does C equal? A is 5, B is 1, C is 10. Okay, so for this one, I'm singing all of this in my head. Go ahead and plug it in, and let's see how you do with the rest of it, okay? Go ahead and pause the video, and good luck. Okay, so here's everything's plugged in, and then did you get -199 for underneath the square root? Yeah, me too. So what's the square root of -199? Yeah, you can't do that. So sorry guys, this was a little tricky one, but this one ends up being no real solution because you can't take the square root of a negative number. Okay? All right, next one. Number 4. Now, if you wanted to also on number 3, we could have factored that. Like what? I could have factored it? Yep, you could have. Okay, so we're adding everything to the other side. We get 9x squared minus 12x plus 4 equaling 0. What is your A, B, and C? Yeah, A is 9, B is -12, and C is 4. Okay, so let's see if you can plug everything into the right spot. Pause the video. Good luck. Okay, so I kind of did everything except for the part underneath the square root, which we'll do together. So that is -12 squared minus 4 times 9 times 4, right? And we get 0, okay? So as I'm solving this, the square root of 0 is, yeah, that's right, it's 0. So I don't have to worry about that, guys. So that part kind of cancels out, and we're just left with x equals 12 over 18, which you could write of two different ways. You could say, well, as the fraction, or as the decimal, it's 0.67, or if you reduce it, it's 2/3. So you can say it any way you want to. But that's kind of nice when that part underneath the square root equals 0. That's nice. That's the one solution. We've talked about that before. Okay? And then the last one, number 5, I'll help you set it up, but then you guys are all on your own. Okay? So we're going to subtract the 5x to the other side, and I need to subtract 18. And then we get 3x squared. Well, positive 5x minus 5x is 0, minus 18 equals 0. So I know in your head you might want to be like, well, I could solve it this way too. That's right, there is another way to solve this, but we're practicing the quadratic formula, okay? So this is where b equals 0 and c is -18, okay? So why don't you guys plug in and see if you can solve this on your own, and then I will have the answers up when you're done. Good luck. Okay, and when you do this, you should be getting that x equals plus or minus 2.45. Now, if we would have solved this another way, we actually would have used inverses, SADMAP, and you could have gotten the same thing because there's no linear term. But since we were practicing using the quadratic formula, this is what we get. Okay, so if you can't tell or not, my class is starting to come in, and that is the end of the homework, or the notes for today. Remember, your homework is 8.6 Practice A. If you need any help, please come see Ms. Carranza or myself. Otherwise, this is Mr. Grice signing off for Algebra Unit 8.6 Notes, Day 1. Thanks for watching.